The day I cut off my twin sister. For most of my life, I've been the one people leaned on. I'm the fixer. The dependable one. The strong sister. But let me say this loud and clear, I am done. I'm 44 years old, married for 12 years, and mother to 2 boys, ages 11 and 14. My marriage isn't a fairy tale. My husband has cheated on me twice, and intimacy? That disappeared over a year ago. We still live together, still core a business, still share parenting. Some days, I feel like we're business partners with shared custody, nothing more. But we keep it moving, for the kids, for the mortgage, for the image. In the middle of all this chaos, I've been holding up not just my family, but my twin sister Sandy's life, too. And that's the part that's now over. Sandy has struggled for years. She's had back surgeries, chronic pain, weight gain, and a long-standing dependence on pain medication. When she's sober, she can be hilarious and magnetic, the kind of person you'd love to sit next to at a party. But when she's not, she collapses into this void, dragging everyone down with her. And unfortunately, I've been the one always reaching in to pull her back out. I've cooked for her, cleaned her place, watched her son more times than I can count, while juggling 2 boys of my own and a crumbling marriage. I became her nurse, therapist, babysitter, and maid. And for what? So she could turn around and betray me? Let's talk about Dan, her so-called husband. Yeah, they're legally separated, but still live together like that's normal. It's not. I've never liked him. My gut knew from day one he was off. Last year, the whole thing went off the rails. He sent a D-pic to my husband. Let me repeat that, my sister's husband sent an unsolicited, graphic photo to my husband. He brushed it off with a weird taco joke. My husband, the king of avoidance, laughed and moved on. I didn't. I knew what I saw, creepy, manipulative, and disgusting. But did Sandy care? Nope. Then Dan comes out as gay. Okay, cool. That doesn't change what he did. And it certainly doesn't make it okay for him to still be around my kids. When I said I didn't want Dan near them, Sandy had the audacity to call me a hypocrite. Me. A hypocrite. Because my marriage has issues, I'm not allowed to set boundaries? Because my husband cheated, I'm not allowed to protect my boys from a man who once sexually harassed their father? No. That was my breaking point. I told her I was done helping. Done pretending everything was normal. And then it got worse. We were at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. I was sitting on the couch, drink in hand, trying to have a quiet moment. Dan slithers over, wearing this smug smile, and says, right out of nowhere, I could blackmail you. I blinked. Excuse me? He leaned in like it was some kind of joke and started going off about how he could spill the tea about my husband's affairs. The way he said it? Calm. Casual. Like we were swapping gossip. My blood turned to ice. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked straight out. I didn't even say goodbye. I just left with a friend before I did something I'd regret. I told my husband. And you know that quiet, cold anger, the kind that doesn't yell but acts? That's the one he got. He didn't say a word. He just got in the car and drove to Sandy's house. Dan opened the door all smiles like nothing had happened. Tried to act like the good guy. Said he had a box of our boys' old stuff they had left behind over the years. My husband took one look inside and his stomach turned. In the box was a piece of a toilet training potty seat. Why was Dan holding on to a child's potty seat for years? Why did he think presenting that was some kind of olive branch? That wasn't sweet. That was deeply, disturbingly wrong. My husband let him have it. Told him everything he should have said long ago. Then came back and told me, that's it. We're done. And I was too. I called Sandy and told her that as long as Dan was in her life, I was out. She can cry victim all she wants. Call me dramatic. Paint me as the bad guy. I don't care anymore. I've spent years carrying her through her mess. Years of sacrificing time, energy, and mental health. All while she kept that man in her house, pretending everything was fine, even as he disrespected me, my husband, and my children. This isn't about drama. This is about protection. About boundaries. And if it means cutting off my own twin sister, so be it. We made a public post, not to start a firestorm, but to take away Dan's imagined power. You can't blackmail someone if they've already told their truth. We shared enough to make it clear we were stepping away, not from weakness, but from strength. I'm not proud of what's happened in my marriage. I've been hurt, betrayed, and neglected. But I've worked every day to hold this family together. Dan? He came in and tried to tear it down. And Sandy let him. So no, I won't carry their weight anymore. I won't babysit their chaos or clean up their damage. I choose my peace. I choose my children. I choose me. And I am done. In the days following the barbecue, my world felt different. Dan's words, "I could blackmail you," operated like a virus in my mind. It was more than a threat, it was proof they believed they had control, over me, over my husband, over our family. At home, I found my husband standing quiet and resolute. He didn't need to say anything, his dark eyes and set jaw spoke volumes. For years, I had carried boundaries alone. Now, he was ready to enforce them with me. We decided to reclaim our story. We drafted a Facebook post, not to shame Sandy or Dan, but to release their hold. The narrative was ours, yes, it was painful, yes, we were setting lines, and no, threats would not silence us. Once truth is out, blackmail loses all leverage. That night, an unfamiliar calm washed over me. I relished speaking my truth instead of smoothing edges to avoid conflict. I realized that setting limits isn't harsh, it's an act of self-respect. Experts note that establishing boundaries is essential for mental and emotional health. Sandy reacted with fury and betrayal, accusing me of turning my back on her. She cast me as the villain. But I recognized something powerful, I no longer needed to defend my actions. The silence that followed wasn't defeat, it was peace. Research on sibling estrangement shows that stepping away from a toxic relationship can bring relief and improved well-being. In the quiet, I grieved, for my sister, for the bond severed, for the years lost trying to patch a broken dynamic. Studies describe this grief as akin to other significant losses, deep pain, sadness, sometimes relief mixed with guilt. I still feel it, but not at the cost of my sense of safety. My boys notice the change. They say I laugh more now. They play again. When we talk bedtime or homework, I'm fully present, not drained by secret worry or debt from carrying everyone else's burdens. My relationship with my husband has softened too. We've had long, honest conversations and rediscovered trust we thought lost. What have I learned? Boundaries aren't ultimatums, they're lifelines. Studies emphasize that setting limits protects both mental health and relationships. Estrangement can be a doorway to healing, not a wall. Although painful, stepping back created space for self-care and renewed purpose. I get to decide what's enough. And when enough becomes clear, you owe no further explanation to anyone, even your twin. I won't lie, parts of me hope Sandy and I can rebuild someday. Family does matter. But not at the price of my peace, my kids' safety, or my dignity. If healing ever becomes possible, it must begin with acknowledgement, therapy, and respect, on both sides. Until then, I stand firm, hands untied. Every morning, I wake knowing I chose me and my children. I reclaimed quiet moments once stolen by drama. My life isn't empty, it's full of authenticity. And though our twin bond lies dormant, I'm living again, unapologetically and unafraid. And that is enough, for now. In the wake of the barbecue, everything shifted. Dan's words, "I could blackmail you," echoed in my head as a chilling reminder, they thought they could control me. And for once, I refused to let that happen. Back home, my husband stood quietly. No words were needed, his eyes, his stance spoke volumes. For years, I had borne these boundaries alone, but now he was ready to stand with me. We decided to reclaim our story. We wrote a simple but powerful Facebook post, not to shame anyone, but to strip Dan's leverage away. Once our truth was shared, his threat held no weight. Truth removes the power of blackmail. That night, I felt an unfamiliar but soothing calm. Speaking my truth, instead of smoothing it over to avoid conflict, awakened something inside me. I realized that boundaries aren't mean, they're essential. They're acts of strength and self-respect. Experts say setting healthy limits supports mental and emotional well-being by clearly defining how much support or contact is appropriate in any relationship. Sandy responded with rage and accusations, calling me a traitor and hypocrite. But I didn't respond. I let the silence speak for me. It wasn't defeat, it was peace. Research into sibling estrangement shows that stepping away from toxic dynamics often leads to relief and restored well-being. In the quiet aftermath, grief settled over me, grief for the bond we lost, the years spent fixing her life, and the distance she created. It was pain layered with relief. Psychological studies on estrangement describe this as similar to losing someone you love, intense sadness mixed with guilt, but ultimately, potentially freeing. Meanwhile, the change in my boys was immediate. They said, "Mom laughs again." They feel my presence at bedtime and in homework time, because I'm finally free from invisible burdens. Even in my marriage, openness and laughter are returning, I'm present instead of drained. Here's what I've learned. Boundaries are lifelines, not punishments. They protect mental health, improve emotional regulation, prevent anxiety and burnout. Saying no is self-care. It's not rude, it builds confidence, respect, and models healthy behavior for our children. Estrangement can heal. It's not about shutting hearts, but giving space for growth and authentic reconnection, if the other party is willing to meet us halfway. I won't lie, I hope someday Sandy can see this isn't about punishment but survival. Family ties matter, but not at the cost of my safety, self-worth, or my boy's well-being. If reconciliation ever happens, it must come with accountability, no Dan, no abuse, just honesty and mutual respect. Every morning now, I wake up feeling alive. I no longer live to fix others at my expense. My life is full of laughter, self-compassion, clarity. And even if our twin bond remains dormant, I'm not lost without it. I'm whole. And that is enough, for now. In the days that followed my decision to walk away, I felt as if I was living in a glass house. One misstep, one careless move, and I might shatter everything. But instead of trembling under that pressure, I found that my hands were steadier than ever. I was living deliberately now, choosing each step, each boundary, with intention. Every morning began the same, my children still asleep, I would make a pot of coffee and sit by the window, wrapped in the soft light of dawn. I watched the world wake up, the neighbors collecting their bins, the early joggers warming up. But inside, I was the one breathing more deeply. Before, I'd have been halfway to the school door before I realized I was already running on autopilot. Now, I paused. I looked at the steam rising from my mug. I let the quiet settle into me before the day began. At first, it felt strange, peace, quiet, space. My phone used to buzz constantly, messages from Sandy asking favors, updates about Dan, occasional snide remarks if I'd forgotten something. Those messages all stopped. It hurt, of course, it felt like a punch to the gut. But even that hurt carried relief. No guilt, no obligation. Just silence, and for the first time in years, I was free to choose my response. Or not. I picked up the pieces of my marriage with the same care I'd once poured into my sister. My husband and I, partners in work and parenting, were rediscovering partnership in life. We started holding small weekly check-ins, little moments where there were no distractions, no phones on the table, no business talk on the agenda. We took short walks after dinner, memories and laughter finding their way back into the gaps left by resentment. It wasn't magic. We both brought baggage into those walks, unspoken disappointments, a distance built over years of emotional neglect. But now, we spoke. We weren't afraid of sharp edges and truth. I felt so alone, I admitted one evening, looking at the reflection of my hands wrapped around his. Even beside you. He squeezed my fingers. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I want to be. For our boys, the change was palpable. My 11-year-old noticed I was smiling when I talked to him. My 14-year-old asked me why I was spending less time on my phone. I told them simply, I'm choosing to be all here, with you. And when I said it, I actually meant it. Without realizing, I had become a safer space for them. They leaned in more often, sharing school projects, late-night jokes, silly moments. In their company, I was no longer the frayed, tired version of myself. I was the mom who tucked them in, who remembered their favorite silly snack, who knew their friends' names. That gift, to be present, felt like reclaiming part of myself I thought was gone. Work, too, became a place of recalibration. Co-running our small business with my husband, I had previously carried strained smiles and overdue tasks even on days I felt wrecked inside. Now, I showed up differently. I asked for help when I needed it. I acknowledged fatigue instead of pushing through. I even wrote in our shared agenda, take breaks, check in with me, work smarter, not harder. My husband adopted my habit. We started scheduling lunch breaks, no phones, no emails, just conversation. Slowly, productivity rose. Burnout slipped. But the heart of this change was the boundary I had drawn around Sandy, and around Dan. I didn't hate her. I loved her. But love without respect is corrosive. I'd spent years sacrificing my mental health and the well-being of my children for the toxic dynamic she allowed. Now I was choosing differently. I don't speak ill of Dan. He exists outside my life now because he tried to manipulate me, threaten me. That is all. I don't feed that energy with conscious focus. But I don't let it survive by silence either. The Facebook post we made was a shield more than a sword. It didn't name names, But it declared, "We will not be bullied." It showed power in vulnerability. No guilt, no shame, just truth. That helped me breathe easier. The bitterness around it drained out. After the post, I spent more hours outside, quiet ones. I walked in parks near our house, sometimes with the kids, sometimes alone. I journaled. Every day, no matter how short, I let my thoughts pour onto paper. Fragments of belonging, echoes of grief, hopes and fears, moments of self-doubt and of pride, all of it went down in that notebook. Writing became a ritual. It anchored me. It reminded me I had space for sorrow and also space for hope. Time marched on. Friends who knew what had happened reached out with quiet support. We had lunches, coffee dates, evening messages that didn't require me to unload or perform. My circle hadn't changed, except that now it supported the real me, not the version who always had to take care of everyone else first. And Sandy? There were moments I fantasized about texting her. Not to reopen the wound, but to send something like, "Hope you're okay." But each time, I felt the tense coil in my chest and realized that impulse came from old bonds, not healing ones. I recognized that pleasing her had been my habit, not my choice. I decided to let the impulse go. In counseling, I learned that estrangement doesn't always end in forgiveness. Forgiveness can come years later when both people are healed. But healing can begin in silence. The counselor pointed out that especially with twins, the bond is deep, and so the wound runs deep, too. Letting it rest doesn't mean letting it go forever. It means giving it space to breathe, and giving yourself permission to live without being pulled back into old patterns. My therapist summed it up simply: you cut off contact not to punish her, but to preserve your life. When she said it, I realized I'd been trapped in guilt, mistaking caring for codependence. I had to untangle one from the other. There are empty spaces at family events, empty chairs, quiet corners where I used to be. It still hurts. Especially on birthdays, holidays, mother-side gossip lunches. But I've learned how to fill those spaces with care, not care for others, but self-care. Deep breaths. Reminders on days I am enough. Rituals, a single flower on the table where I used to set something for Sandy, a moment of gratitude for what I have now. It isn't lonely, it's whole. With time, I grew protective of this new version of me. I declined drinking invitations that seemed heavy on drama. I stopped being the fix-it person in others' crises. Instead of volunteering for every school bake sale, I picked the ones that mattered to my own kids. I gave myself permission to say no. "Not now" became my favorite phrase. As month followed month, the transformation felt slow but unstoppable. I woke up one morning and realized I was happy. Not happy because everything was perfect, because it wasn't. My marriage still required work. My business still demanded long days. But I was happy because I was choosing my life. That was different from surviving it. I booked a weekend retreat, a quiet cabin by a lake with no cell signal, just books and reflections and nature. I cried in the trees. I laughed into the open air. I soaked in sunrises and star fields. I came back with renewed purpose, more grounded than before. I wanted to share that energy with my home. My kids noticed it right away. My 14-year-old son said, "Mom, you look different. More relaxed." And I was. Relaxed and powerful. I was wearing the skin I'd spent a lifetime forging, skin that could hold anger and love, grief and peace, silence and laughter, all at once. There were days I wondered if I'd made the right choice. What if she reached out later, full of remorse, needing me? Could I forgive her? Could I let go of the hurt? I decided that would be a future decision. Now, I guard my present. I'm no longer the one who falls apart when family drama brews. I sit back and breathe. I get to choose which fires I step into. Trauma doesn't control me. Nor do demands born from decades of unhealthy dynamics. Yes, I've lost a twin. But I've gained myself. I still think of her, of the woman I once was when I thought carrying her pain was my purpose. But I've traded that weight for clarity. Not because I stopped caring, for her, for family, for connection, but because I started caring for me. And that matters more. As I type this, I hear my husband and kids prepping dinner in the kitchen, a clatter of pans, the sizzle of veggies, my son's laughter at some inside joke. My heart tightens with gratitude. We set boundaries to protect that sound. We did. Boundaries can protect love, too. I wrote this not to show I'm perfect. I'm not. I still feel grief. I still sometimes wonder if I'll regret this silence one day. But I don't regret the choice. I did not bow to manipulation or fear. I protected my home, my children, myself. I inherited clarity, peace, laughter, Love. That is not nothing. That is everything. And now? I live. I breathe. I am present. I am awake. I am enough. In the months since I drew that line, I've noticed something undeniable. My energy feels returned. I can breathe. The constant stress, the exhausting need to fix, rescue, and perform, has lifted. Science backs this up. Setting boundaries reduces stress and anxiety, and brings back emotional stability and self-respect. I still wake with that morning ritual, coffee in hand, quiet around me, and I feel grounded. I don't react the way I used to when drama erupts. I'm calm, decisive. I can say no without guilt. Like the article I read advised, a simple "I'm sorry, I can't" does the job. No over-explaining. No guilt. Just clarity. At home, laughter echoes again. My boys see me present. My husband and I speak honestly, not through silence. I'm not the fix-it machine, I'm a mother, spouse, partner in life. I'm whole again. Am I sad about losing Sandy? Yes. But I've reclaimed peace. And you can't pour from an empty cup. Practicing boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential. I'm rebuilding, with walls that protect, not trap. This ending isn't a goodbye, it's a new beginning. I am here, I am enough, and I am free.